I hope you're having an amazing day. My name is Colin, and in this video we're going to have a look at why IDOs are getting postponed during a bearish market. So as you can see, for the last 3 months, Bitcoin has moving down in a linear downward trend, and of course is extremely volatile. Anytime Bitcoin becomes more volatile and goes down, IDOs, private sales, TGEs are getting postponed. The question is why. A lot of people don't understand, and in this video we're going to have a look with a real life example. So Valero DAO was a project that launched yesterday on the Veles blockchain. They did push through with their launch where many others postponed their launch, right? So when we look at IOTexPad, Ducky Land, a lot of these projects that were listed on private sales recently are yet to complete their IDO and or listing because of the current market conditions. So why is it so important to launch in favorable market conditions and postpone either the IDO and the listing? That's what we're going to have a look at, and it's actually not that complicated. So Valero DAO launched yesterday. Let me grab the chart, and this was incubated by Bluezilla. I did cover it on a review yesterday as well. But we definitely expect large pumps from the Bluezilla incubated projects, as they usually do. So this project launched at about 0.05 cents, right? So it's basically holding at a 12x right now, which is quite significant. And you can see that initial dump and then a repump to about 10 cents. So that was about 20x. And then basically a small linear downward trend, gaining a little bit over time and then moving down again and now gaining again. It's definitely not that significant. It's quite volatile still. However, I must admit it did a lot better than expected. When we see that Bitcoin is so volatile, it's also #1 trending, as I'm seeing right now actually on DEX tools. So all of these projects are currently trending, the hot pairs, or maybe that's just the Veles blockchain pass, right? Maybe that's it. But definitely interesting to note that when we look at how the market behaved, specifically yesterday, at about 7:30 p.m. So I need to look at 7:30 p.m., which was right here. There was definitely a pump, and that pump is resembled here as well, but it's not that significant. It's just 1 cent. So there were more significant pumps along the way. Now, of course, the Valero DAO was quite surprising. 12x, holding at 12x, I would say is extremely good for anybody that did invest into this project. 12x, you should be quite happy. Now, when we look at the volatility of Bitcoin, we can even look at a launchpad, for example, like Seedify, that did launches before, right? So let me take an example launch where we have some information. Okay, let's go down, for example, to this one, Plutonius private sale. I have taken this one as an example before. So they're going to raise, on this raise, probably $200,000, right? Yeah, that's a normal amount that Seedify usually raises per phase. So phase 1, phase 2, they have the overviews, right? So let me select phase 1. So in phase 1, which is the original round, they only raised 111K, which is 58% of the total raise, right? So people, when the market is volatile, have less confidence. This relates back to obviously the fear and greed index, right? So when the market is extreme fear, people are less likely to spend money on higher risk opportunities, right? This is basically because of emotion, human behavior, right? Each day we analyze emotions and sentiments from different sources and crunch them into one simple number, the fear and greed index. So this is an extremely good indicator to have a look at every single day to basically get a projection of what the average behavior in the market is like. So when the market is in fear or extreme fear, especially not on the greed side of things, you will definitely notice that IDO raises, where projects are trying to raise money, even if it's only 200K, and Seedify being one of the biggest launch pads, having problems and struggling, where basically it's 58% filled in the first phase, right? So 40%, there's only 455 participants. Then they're doing a second phase, which is basically like a first come, first serve, right? So you can add more allocation if you want to, and they reach it to 91%. Then they need to do a third round to basically do a free-for-all to get it filled up to 96%, but still it's not completely filled. I think it's very important to stress that that directly resembles the market sentiment, right? So when we look at Tojoverse, which was raising a very significant amount of money, 475,000, in the first round, they only closed 64%. They did have a lot of participants, right? So this is a public round, I assume. It's not a private round. But they had a lot of participants, but still, even with 4,500 people joining in, they were not able to sell more than 64%, right? And what we usually notice, so in the second round, the first come, first serve, it did get filled up 100%. So for the Tojoverse project, that is really, really good news. In a market where market conditions are a lot better, the market is a lot more bullish, right? The fear and greed index shows a lot more on the greed side of things. What you'll notice is that these projects maybe only need, let's say, a phase 1 to go up to 90-95%, and then just a phase 2 for the people who didn't commit to basically push it to 100%. Usually there's always 2 phases, right? There's never just one phase. But if you look at Platonians, they were raising so much money, right? It's 190K here, 183K here, 475K here, and another 475. So you're raising about 1.25 million, right? With the current market conditions, of course, that is extremely risky. And they must be happy that even after 3-4 rounds, it did get completely sold out, except this tiny portion here, which I think is not that big of a problem. But in the first round, again, 68, so it was a little higher. And the second phase, it got filled up. So you can imagine Seedify, when we look at, let's say, the categories of the launch pads, and I would measure the launch pads categories based on their market cap, right? So the market cap of the actual launchpad and Seedify. This is not all the launchpads that are available, but it's just a handful. They are currently at about 135 million, so they're one of the biggest launchpads, right? You can imagine that launchpads with 1/10 of that value, which is basically anything outside the top 10 launchpads, they are very much struggling to fill these IDO projects. So when a company is going to raise money or trying to raise money through whatever launchpad form, the investors do not have enough trust in the market. It is bad for the company because they do not raise enough money which they need to fund their project. It is also bad for their brand because people apparently do not believe in the project enough to commit money within the current market conditions, right? Then in addition to that, when we look at the complete overview, so that is basically the IDOs getting postponed. When we look at the actual other side of things, where TGE, so token generation events, are being delayed, it basically has to do with the fact that when that TGE amount is released, right, these tokens, when Bitcoin moves in a downward pattern, are extremely likely to get dumped, right? People are not holding on. VCs, the venture capitals that invested with a longer term vision, give advice, and basically they're looking for neutral and or a more bullish type of market, usually if they're not as confident in their own project and or marketing efforts, to basically, usually they spike up the marketing a little bit in terms of getting attention on the project by people. So the sell-off is not as big because people are also buying on the TGE. If nobody's buying on the TGE, it's going to crash, especially in a bearish market, because people rather have money out of the project they have committed to rather than holding onto the coins looking for a bullish market, right? So these two things are extremely important to take into consideration. Now, when we look at Valero DAO, doing a 12x, I think it's great, right? I think it's great. I think with the current market conditions moving forward, we should be very much, as IDO investors, be appreciative of the 2 to 3 to 4x launches, right? We're talking 100%, 200%, 300% return, which is extremely significant, right? Anything where the fear and greed index is not in the green, so I'm not saying here, I'm saying here, then anything from a 1 to 4x is basically a good project for me. And you'll get the occasional 10x, right? However, over time, when the market becomes bullish again, you will see a lot more projects launching, a lot more aggressively, raising a lot more money as well. Probably that's like that linear upward trend that the market will see. But this is basically, in a very, very basic nutshell, the reason why companies, projects that are currently trying to raise money might postpone their IDO or delay their token generation event. I hope everything is clear. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments below and I'll be sure to have a look. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.